What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of Three for the Money. All lines that we will be discussing are provided by DraftKings. Okay, it really hit me on Monday night when I was watching Notre Dame get run off the field and then come storming back. The guy, we don't have many more snaps of football here, and I do not count spring football. So we got 3 games left. Luckily, they're what many would consider the 3 best games. And I bring my man Stuckey from the Action Network, who, I saw some of your tweets mid-game against the Ravens. That was rough. Obviously, the one that stands out in my head was the turnover luck that the old Fighting Ryan Fitzpatricks in Buffalo have right now, and you think that might eventually come to an end. I thought that it was different than the Chiefs game in the AFC Championship game, but somewhat similar. Of like, guys, are we overthinking this? Hand it to 22 and just run Lamar every play. What are we doing?
Yeah, it was a disappointing loss. I mean, statistically, they were the better team, but you can't go look at all 4 games last week. I mean, the Texans on a down the down basis were arguably the better team. The Chiefs at one point it was like 300 to 100 yards. And what did they do? I mean, they got sacked 8 times, but special teams blunders. Lions, I mean, their offense moved up and down the field. What did they do? Turned it over a million times. And then you look at the Ravens and what did them and the Rams too. But the Ravens, it was mistakes that Lamar just doesn't make in the regular season.
It's crazy.
Like I think he's turned it over 2 or more times in 50% of his playoff games. I think he's done that in the regular season only 10% of the time.
Fumble's a little freaky, right? In the weather. To me, the pick was he hadn't done that all year. Just, I mean,
Yeah,
that
the
was
pick
like
was
a James
bad.
Winston.
It was just an arm punt. But even the fumble, you just can't do that at this point in your career. I mean, he wasn't touched. I know it was fluky. And then your veteran tight end, Mark Andrews, it was a shame to see. But I mean, obviously you have the 2 point conversion drop. You have the fumble. That was a devastating fumble. But a play that many aren't even talking about is before the Lamar fumble, which Mark Andrews dropped a wide open pass. So, the next play might have been different. The whole game could have been different.
Is that
So
the
he had a
worst game? Is
terrible
that the worst
game.
game you've ever seen him play?
Yeah. Uh,
I mean,
by far. I mean,
he's a really good player. Obviously,
he
I mean,
never
it's
fought like his career. He never fumbles. I think he only had like 2 drops on the season.
11
Um,
touchdowns this season.
yeah, and so it was a shame to see. But they made mistakes, and the Bills didn't. I did think that the Bills, and look, the Bills have been very fortunate in. I think they're plus 24, plus 27 if you count the playoffs in turnover margin this year. And that's a tough thing to rely on against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in Arrowhead this late in the season. I think Mahomes has won 20 straight games at home in cold temperatures in November or later. So they've definitely been fortunate in the turnover department. Like Josh Allen's had a terrific year, but he's gotten away with some throws, and then their defense has just come up with timely turnovers, some lucky, some not, over and over again. Does that come to an end this week? I did think that the Bills turtled up and they were kind of just trying to run out the clock in the end. Like some of the play calls late, you still have Josh Allen, still be aggressive.
Yeah, like the quick
And
screen. It was like,
yeah,
what are we doing? Like, let him just throw a slant route for 5 yards instead of hoping you can break 10 yards behind the line of
yeah.
scrimmage.
So I thought that they got a little too conservative. And why I bring that up is that
Well, that's the
if
coach.
they're,
That's the coach telling Joe Brady because they hadn't run those plays throughout the game.
yeah, but why I bring that up is you can't do that this week. If you're going to beat the Chiefs, you have at in Arrowhead in the playoffs, you have to kill them late because if it's say the Bills are up 4 with 2:30 to go and the Chiefs have the ball. I mean, what's going to happen? The Bills can't defend over the middle of the field, and you're going to give Mahomes 4 downs to just pick them apart and go up and down, up and down the field, probably score a game-winning touchdown. You have to kill them. How did the Bills beat the Chiefs in the first game when they met earlier this season? Is they, instead of kicking a field goal, they went for it on 4th down, and Allen ran it in to go up 9. That's what they're going to need to do. They're going to have to stay aggressive, and you're going to have to kill shot the Chiefs because you can't give them the ball. You can't give Mahomes the ball late at home in the playoffs because this Bills defense has real issues, especially defending over the middle of the field, which is what the Chiefs are going to do to attack you. They're probably going to go pass heavy, and they're just going to relentlessly attack their linebackers and their safeties. And not to mention the Bills also have some potential injuries in their secondary as well. So the Bills are going to have to stay aggressive, and they're just going to need a monster game from Josh Allen.
It's weird that I remember telling you it was like you can get basically the Ravens, Bills. This was to start the playoffs 6-1 to win the Super Bowl, and you bet on them both. You don't know which one's going to win, and knowing that they're going to play the Chiefs in the next round. I just looked before we hopped on. The Bills are, a little over 2-1 to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, whoever won that game is going to drop dramatically. But like the Ravens, pretty big kick in the nuts the last 2 years, losing the Chiefs game and the Bills game. But like they're such a well-run organization, they're going nowhere. They've just their team, top to bottom, is better than the Bills, fully healthy. Right? You could argue it's the best team in the AFC if you remove the three quarterbacks. They have the best roster, and John already has the Super Bowl. Like there is this Sean McDermott. Obviously, there's this Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, but there's this Sean McDermott, Andy Reid thing. Like John Harbaugh was Andy Reid's guy, but he won a Super Bowl like 7 years before Andy ever won one. Right? There's this Sean
Yep.
McDermott thing. Like it's always kind of the elephant in the room. Like, is he always kind of fighting for his job? Is he just a made man? It doesn't feel like he gets treated like Harbaugh or Tomlin with the conversation, despite his success. And now he's got like his quarterback this year has played better than Andy's quarterback, and he just probably gets the biggest win of his career. Is that fair to say against the Ravens?
Yeah.
And now the momentum coming in, I think more than the Ravens, like they can show up because they have beat this team so many times in the regular season, and they've played them well in the postseason. Like I do think they'll show up believing they can win the game. Now, how much does that mean? I don't know, but there is something to be said when you're playing fucking Michael Jordan or Tom Brady, or you show up last group next to Tiger Woods in 2002 in the red. Like 99% of people don't believe. Like how the Lions, if most teams in the NFL would not believe they could beat the Chiefs. This is the one team. And now, are they good enough or not? Like, I'm tempted to, let's just talk about that game. Tempted to take the Bills based on odds. Like, what are the odds? This team, like, they haven't really had, I mean, that Bengal game, but it was like, was Mahomes concussed or something? Because that's like the weirdest half they've ever played. In against the Pats in his first year, like they just legitimately got beat. It was a crazy tough game. Pats played a million of those. Bengal game does not look like any of their other games that second half, right? So it's like
Yeah.
I'm assuming the Chiefs are going to play well, right, as they always do. No different than last week or last year against the Ravens, where it's not like they won 30-10. I mean, they won 17-10, right? And they didn't score a point in the second half. So it's just like, okay, are the Bills buttoned up enough? Is their coach loose enough? I think their team will believe. I think the key, and this is what the Chiefs often do, and they did it against Houston right away. They're up 13-3. It's like they're not even playing that well. They did to you guys last year. They're up 7-0 right away. It's like, holy shit, they're here to play. It's like if that happens, a 7-0, that takes the wind out. You almost have to. I'm taking the Bills. Again, based on, you'd be crazy to take the Bills based on recent history. It's just the odds. I saw a highlight of the Peyton Manning comeback, the Pats. It's going to happen sooner or later. Someone's going to beat them. Uh, and it's just got to be the team that has to come into this game believing they can. And eventually, a couple things are going to go wrong for the Chiefs, right? You'd think, because if they win this game, is there a soul in the world that believes they're not going to win the Super Bowl?
Probably not. No, unless you're an Eagles or Commanders fan. Um, Yeah,
I like the Commander story. I think they would have zero chance to beat Kansas City.
agreed. Yeah, I make it a coin like a basically like a coin flip game. So I don't think I'll be betting on a side. I mean, just Mahomes is an underdog or favored under a field goal in the playoffs, 7-0 straight up, 7-0 against the spread. Everyone knows all of the numbers.
Weather's
I
irrelevant, right? Because all the same with the Ravens, they're all used to playing in the cold. It's just
Yeah,
normal.
that doesn't matter. But I mean, you can't ignore the fact that the Chiefs have been underwhelming all season, and then everyone just says, "Oh, well, they turn it on in the playoffs." They didn't really turn it on last week. That was ugly. I mean, this is a Texans offense that looked horrendous all year long. And outside of the sacks, they were moving the ball with who? I mean, they were down their top two receivers. They also down two starting defensive backs. And they played pretty well
Maybe the
in
Texans
that
are just a
game.
bad
And
matchup because they had some moments in the regular season game. They played well in that game. They're just a good matchup
yeah,
against
well, they
Kansas.
have like they have guys who can wreck the game off the edge. Do the Bills have that? Not necessarily. And because the biggest weakness on this Chiefs team is their offensive line. And they've kicked Tooney out to left tackle. That's hurt their run game, by the way. When he was at left guard, and then you just have a big guy at tackle, no matter who it was, they could run the ball much more effectively. Now with Tooney out at left tackle, you have a backup guard in there. Their run game has kind of taken a hit, um, and it's not like Tooney is elite. They still need to help him at some, but the Texans have elite corners who basically took out Brown and Hopkins had no catches. And they have elite edge rushers who did a lot in that game
DeAndre
to kind of
Hopkins
put the.
played in that game. I didn't even fucking see him.
It didn't even hear his name once. Yeah, him and Brown had zero catches. The Texans really missed Petrie and Ward in that game because the Chiefs just went over the middle of the field and they went to Worthy and missing your starting slot and starting safety in the end really hurt the Texans in addition to their wide receiver injuries and the special teams mistakes. But yeah, I mean, to me, this game is probably just going to be back and forth until the end. I'll look to bet it live. I actually don't mind the over. I'm still contemplating if I'm going to play it because I do think that the Chiefs' defense is ultimately overrated this year. I know they got Jalen Watson back in the secondary, but their strength when their defense is really good is when Spags dials up pressure. They can get sacks. Karlaftis has been great this year. Everyone knows about Chris Jones. But the Bills have a really good offensive line, and Josh Allen is as good as any quarterback in the NFL at evading sacks. And, he can use his legs here. Because if you go back, this Chiefs team all year, I mean, the Ravens in week one put up 450 yards on them. Since then, they didn't play a single like healthy offense. I mean, you could go the next week was Bengals without Higgins. The Falcons lose two starting offensive linemen. The Bucks don't have Godwin and Evans. I mean, I could go on and on. Even, the Texans lose Dell. The Texans don't have Dell and Diggs last week. I could go on and on all season long. They have benefited from facing offenses that were shorthanded, especially along the offensive line. And then because of that, Spags is able to just dial up pressure and their run defense is better. But we even saw the Texans have success running the ball last week, which they haven't been able to do for most of the year. So I think Buffalo will be able to move the ball with Josh Allen. He'll use his legs here.
He had a
And
big
then
game running. Remember last year in the second round against them. I think he ran for like 75 yards.
he's had in the last five meetings with the Chiefs, he's had 11 or more carries, which is pretty wild. I think he's gone 11, 12, 12, 12, and 11.
You can get him
Um,
two touchdowns rushing basically for plus 550. He's definitely
don't
getting
mind
one
that.
with his legs.
And if it's, at the goal
Short
line,
yardage. Yeah.
yeah, they're going to use him as a battering ram. So I do think that the Chiefs defense, even this late in the season, is a bit overrated, and the Bills will be able to move the ball on him, assuming that they come in with an aggressive game plan. um, which they need to have here. And then I think the Bills' defense is overrated as well, just from a pure talent perspective. And their top corners in concussion protocol, we'll see with Benford, but their safeties are bad. Milano had a good game last week, but their linebackers are okay. But Milano's kind of a little past his prime. And their defensive line is good, but it's undersized. Like this isn't an elite defense. They've just benefited from a lot of turnovers. they're so weak over the middle of the field. That's something Kansas City can really take advantage of. Maybe there was some rust with the Kansas City offense last week. I don't think the Bills can completely wreck their tackles. So I think both teams can move the ball. And then if this is in like the fourth quarter with Allen and Mahomes going back and forth, you could get a couple touchdowns late. So I might look at the over. I just need the Bills to come out and be aggressive here, which I keep going back and forth on how they're going to approach this, but I don't mind the over. I make it a coin flip. If you're looking for some props, I mean
We are.
Kelsey's
Yes.
Kelsey goes over every week. I think we talked about this last week. It's just free money. He's had 14 straight playoff games with at least 5 catches and 70 yards, which is they're both NFL records. But his numbers are inflated if you just do the math. But I'm never going to go under on a Kelsey, especially against a team that can't defend the middle of the field. I don't mind looking at Noah Gray as kind of like an indirect fade of Kelsey because Kelsey's numbers are so inflated. I think there's some value in Noah Gray, like over 13 and a half receiving yards, over 1.5 catches. Again, just like likely last week, and I trust the Chiefs to do this even more than Ravens. You want to attack the middle of the field. And I know everyone knows to prepare for Kelsey, and it still doesn't matter. But the Bills have to be all in on stopping Kelsey here. So I think that's going to open up some opportunities for Gray down the field. Just all the attention on Kelsey, especially when Mahomes buys time scrambling. If you look back earlier this season when they played, Kelsey only had 2 catches on 4 targets, and Gray had 2 touchdowns and 4 catches. So in his last five postseason games, he's had 11 catches, 14 targets, 79 yards. He's averaged a little over 2 catches, about 16 yards per game. He's cleared 1.5 catches and this yardage mark in 4 of his last 5 postseason games. So I think that I like Noah Gray. I think he can sneakily have just a couple big plays down the field, and then a under the radar one, Xavier Worthy over rushing yards. You can find this number anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5, which is fine. Last week it was 4.5 to 5, but he had one rush. The Texans snuffed it out, and it was for -8 yards, which is why this number is a little cheaper. But this season, he ran it in 16 games in the regular season. Remove week 18. He ran it 20 times for 104 yards. So he averaged a little over 5 yards per rush. Had one rush for 7 yards against Buffalo. So if he gets one carry, you're favored to win this bet. And I'm pretty confident that he's going to get a carry. If you go on Reed's history in playoff games, over the last since 2018 AFC Championship game when they played the Patriots and lost that game, they've had a pass catcher run the ball in 19 straight playoff games. And I mean, so 19 of those they've had. If you look at the numbers, those pass catchers had 34 rushing attempts in the past 20 playoff games for 241 yards. So these pass catchers are averaging like 1.7 carries for 12 yards, and 19 total pass catchers have ran for at least 3 yards across those 20 games. And there's been times when Tyreek Hill, you go back, has had 3 carries multiple times in playoff games. And this is a Bills defense that does give up explosive runs. And what the Chiefs do every year in the playoffs is they concentrate who they want to get the ball to, right? During the regular season, it's kind of like spread it all out. And then the postseason, it's like, okay, here's who we really want to get the ball to. And you saw that last week. It's Kelsey and it's Worthy. So I think they want to get the ball in Worthy's hands as often as possible. And if they're going to run it with a wide receiver, which Reed does in almost every single playoff game, it's more, I would say 80% likelihood to be Worthy. And I think that there's a decent chance he gets 2 carries. So I like Worthy over. Don't mind like a Worthy anytime touchdown too. He can get one multiple ways. So Worthy over rushing yards as well.
Well, I got him on DraftKings. The over at 4.5 is -105.
Oh, it's on the move.
So
I'd still bet it, but smaller there. But yeah, this opened at 2.5. Four and a
Xavier
half is where it
anytime
was.
touchdown is almost 2 to 1 plus 190.
2 to 1. Yeah, I like that. Like that.
You know what's crazy
Anything over 2 to 1.
About Kelsey is what year Mahomes began starting? 2018.
18. Yep.
So they played in the two playoff games. They were the 1 seed. That's when the Patriots beat him. He had one touchdown in the playoffs. From 19 till last year, four touchdowns, three touchdowns, three touchdowns, four touchdowns, three touchdowns. Obviously, this year, he just scored a touchdown last week. I mean, he's a multi touchdown game. When I see Travis Kelce getting plus odds just to score a touchdown throughout the game, you just know Patrick looks at his way. You know what I mean?
And
And,
it's
and he
the
finds
Bills
a
can't
way in
cut.
zone, cheats, goes left when you think he's going right. Like they don't have. Whenever I see like, why can't anyone cover him? It's like, guys, they don't. When you game plan against a team, like they run plays. He doesn't run a route. He runs wherever.
No,
If you're going to hang a left, he's going to hang a right, and they know each. They're playing like Carl Malone, John Stockton pick and roll. So they're going to go wherever you don't go. It's not a set play. That's why he can constantly get open. And then like that big
his
play,
touch. Look at his touchdown. His touchdown was on a Mahomes scramble around, and then he
yeah,
just finds a hole and sits in it.
yeah, he's not running like Jerry Rice precise routes here. I mean, he's a great route runner, but he's not like you're doing the right thing probably on defense. You're getting hammered at home when you play him. He's going to do the opposite. So, what's crazy to me about him is that big play that he made against Texans. Do you remember they had a game, might have been like a Thursday night, Sunday night, or Monday night. It was a primetime game against the Chargers when him and Tyreek they came storming back, and those two guys. It was like one of the most dominant performances, and he was so fast just a couple years ago. He's clearly not as fast anymore, but like his instincts to get open, and then even with the ball in his hands, I saw Belichick did this thing on like that show that he does with Ocho Cinco and Chris Long, inside the NFL, that he taught Gronk later in his career because Travis does an excellent job. Is like once you catch the ball, slow down a little bit and gather and look before just sprinting, and a guy can just take out your legs because you can make a move and the guy will overcorrect. And he's great. Like he's like a running back with the ball in his hands, just his instincts.
And he every year we see him turn it on in the playoffs. He's the one who benefits the most from the
The
rest
rest, yeah.
at the end of the season. And they had, like a month off, and you saw him look a little rejuvenated. The and the
There
NFL
been
playoffs,
have you seen the retirement rumors? Which obviously, if they were to win the Super Bowl, he's dating Taylor Swift. He wants to be an actor. Is not crazy. He's made a
no,
ton of money. He's going to make a ton of more. He's dating a billionaire. What else can he accomplish if they win? What else can he accomplish right now? But like I could see, he has a couple. They win the Super Bowl. He'd be just like, peace, I'm out.
I agree. I think it's like he's maybe favored slightly to do it if they win it, and then favored to come back if they don't. Um, I mean, what else? It's three-peat in the NFL. It's never been done before. I mean, how you can't go out much more on top. I mean, I guess if you four-peat, but yeah, I'm curious to see the NFL playoffs. These high leverage games, a lot of times they'll just come down to turnovers or a fluke play here or there. But on a down to down basis, what they really come down to is in some of these games, or if coach comes out with a major curveball, especially a coordinator on either side of the ball. We saw that last week with Washington. I thought they did a great job in deciding to go really zone heavy, and their defense is not good, but they were, they play a good amount of man and were trending more towards man at the end of the regular season. Goff destroyed man coverage all year. They went more zone heavy that game, and while they didn't stop Detroit from going up and down the field, it led to turnovers on Goff making bad throws into coverage, forcing throws down the field where he didn't read the coverage. I'm curious to see how the Bills play this because their McDermott is he's by nature, a lot of too high, prevent the explosive play, make you work it down the field, and then it's worked this year. The offense will eventually make a mistake or will stop you in the red zone. Does How does he play knowing he has struggles over the middle of the field? Like, does they try to play more robber? Do they try to play more man and then force Mahomes to beat them more? And they don't blitz often. Do they try to force Mahomes to beat them more with his receivers on the outside in Hopkins and Brown and trust the corners? But to your point, even if they do that, like Mahomes is still going to buy time. And if you dedicate like these extra resources to Kelsey, he's still going to find holes. So I don't know how they play it, but I'm super curious to see the mix of what they play from the schematic perspective. It's like, do they just because the Chiefs are the kings of death by a thousand cuts all the way down the field, which the Bills will allow you to do. So do they just hope that, hey, we're gonna eventually get a sack or a turnover, or we're just gonna stop you in the red zone? Or do they try to play this more aggressive and say, look, we're gonna try to take away Kelsey, we're gonna play more aggressive, and then if you want to beat us on the outside with your receivers, we'll tip our hat if we do. So curious to see what Babbage and McDermott come up with here. And then this same thing with Spagnuolo. He could always have some curveballs. You know he's going to have some exotic pressures and blitzes. So, and then Reed's going to have a lot of good stuff cooked up. So, yeah, looking forward to the schematic matchup. But that these curveballs in a game like this, you coordinators have something in their back pocket waiting to unleash it because you know everything will be scouted from the entire season. So that's one of the things that I look forward to in these championship games and in the Super Bowl as well.
Well, I would imagine too that the bye week, knowing Andy, that they did kind of obviously you're kind of getting ready, guessing who your next opponent is. But I bet they had a couple quality control guys doing some serious breakdowns on the Ravens and Bills, so that when that game was going on, after they beat Houston, you know, Andy's prepping for both, and obviously
Well,
he
and they
probably
probably held some stuff back. They probably have a bunch of stuff on offense, which is another reason why I like the over. Is because they get that kick return, and then they get a comfortable lead. You didn't really have to unleash the
and
offense.
Texans aren't really an explosive offense to score a bunch of points, so they were kind of
Yeah, and you had a month, and then now you have an extra day. So like from a preparation and rest perspective, the Chiefs, who also get to stay at home, definitely have an advantage over the Bills here. But you know that they installed a number of offensive looks that the Bills haven't seen that you'll probably see in this game, which is a scary proposition for the Bills. But another reason why I kind of like the over, like I just think that the Chiefs offense will look much better. I think it was probably some rust too last week.
well, the pass.
Um,
I thought Mahomes. I think he asked him at halftime, or maybe they asked him at the end of the game about the rust. He just thought he's like that front for them. He's like that's a really good defense, and that front, given their weak offensive line, if you just put Peyton Manning or Tom Brady in their prime in that situation, I mean, how many plays early on in that game did Patrick keep alive? Not even scrambling to run, but just kind of moving around in the pocket. I mean, he was under siege, and he can move, and that's what's like why he's considered with the great quarterbacks. That's like one of his superpowers is those guys had to get rid of the ball fast. That's not really Andy kind of wants to hold it and get an explosive play, and so does Patrick, and he can do it because he's got these I don't know all time great instincts to like know when to move because he doesn't like some of these guys you're watching like this guy just ran into a sack. He rarely does that, but he keeps a lot of plays. Even if the play like he throws it away or it's an incompletion, it's like that is an underrated play by that motherfucker in the pocket.
both of these quarterbacks do
Yeah,
that
obviously
extremely
Josh.
well. I'm the one thing I don't like about this over is I'm super curious. There's been uh, all of this talk all week and discourse about the refs and the penalties on Mahomes. I hated them both. I hate them all. I don't even blame the refs.
Same.
I blame the NFL, the rules, the incessant amount of rules, but I blame the NFL for just not having an easy fix to this. We have the eye in the sky, the replay assist, anything like 15 yarders, like you called a face mask and it wasn't. Um, you missed a clear face mask. Oh, you called roughing the passer, which they're instructed to do, but it definitely wasn't. They can change games. Just anyone at home takes 2 seconds. Just have a ref radio down if it's obvious and then correct it. I think they're going to do that in the offseason, by the way. But these are two quarterbacks who are known to flop.
Like you said, it should
Like,
take under 5 seconds. Didn't touch his face
yeah,
mask. Pick up the flag. Or
yeah, we
hey,
don't need to go.
they went helmet to helmet on each other, not Patrick Mahomes. No flag.
Yeah, we don't need to go under the hood or anything. It'll um those calls like two things can be true. People like really struggle. You have the people that are on the Chiefs side and the people on the Texans side. People on the Chiefs side are like, well, the Texans made mistakes and they got sacked 8 times, and the people on the Texans side are like, well, they got 2 calls to change the game. both of them are true. Like the Texans didn't play well enough to win, but a couple calls, things could be different. Um,
Second call was really devastating given the ebb and flow of that game, right? Because then they drove
yeah,
right down, scored, it basically ended the game.
yeah. So I'm super curious to see how it gets called. Both of these quarterbacks have been known to flop. Allen does it. He hasn't been getting as much shit as Mahomes this week because of that flop near the silence, but Allen does it a lot too. After all the discourse, I have a feeling, I could be dead wrong, but I have a feeling that you get which I would love to see, you get a swallowed whistle here. And they're not going to call much. And but I'm super curious to see how the game gets called, which wouldn't help the over because I kind of like the over. So I would love, if I bet the over, I would love for some
15-yard
flops and
penalties.
some
Yeah.
personal fouls. And so I'm very curious to see how the game gets called after all the discourse this week. But I do think in the offseason, the NFL will address that because, and the other thing that's made me so angry about this NFL season is that eye in the sky with a replay assist. When do they use it? They use it like I don't. It's so random. They just decide to use it every once in a while, and then some other times it's gone from the game, and the eye in the sky is sleeping, or just, I don't know what he's doing. It's so random when they decide to use it and when they don't. So they need to get more consistent there, and they need to make all of these 15-yard penalties be able to just be quickly overturned. And if it's close, fine. You just have the guy say, "Yeah, it's close. We don't need to say anything." But the ones that are, and you don't have to go to the hood. You just have a guy sit down. Nah, it's pretty close. Just stay with the call on the field. You could even just yell it to the crowd after replay assist. It stands. But the ones that are completely obvious that everyone knows, and I think the NFL will do it in the offseason. And people are like, "Oh, it's going to add to the game. It will happen 4 times a game. It'll take 5 seconds. You're telling me you don't have 25 seconds? You can't have 25 seconds to the game to get it right? Stop. I get not going under the hood for 3 minutes and a commercial break for everything, but the replay says just get more consistent. That's my rant for the day.
My rant is I do think that Patrick Mahomes stopping on the sideline, and he's done it countless times. He did it against the 49ers, and Nick Bosa said after the game, he's like, in what world are we, what are we talking about here? I think he should be flagged for that. If you stop at the sideline and do it, like you have to, this is where the Tom Brady thing, where he pushes and like these rules like are a joke. I mean, not that long ago, you would have had someone torpedoing into his head in that moment of just like, fuck you. And I love the guy. I will back him up, like you said, against all these people that think there's like some the actual conspiracy that once happened with the Lakers, David Stern, the mob in Philadelphia, and Tim Donaghy and everything going on there. That was real. This is not. This is. I said, if you watch as much football as you and I do, like Will Levis gets these calls. Just no one's really watching that game when there's 7 other games. It's ridiculous. But when 40 million people are watching Patrick Mahomes, it feels like it's rigged. It's happening to all these quarterbacks, and it infuriates anyone that loves the sport because it's like no one wants these quarterbacks to get injured, but some of these are crazy. you know, the Texans they ran into each other. They didn't even touch them. And to me, where I get mad, we can talk about Philly now, is like the Jalen Hurts ball where he throws a hospital ball in the history of the league when two safety or corners behind a guy and a safety's coming over. That Devontae Smith gets ejected or not ejected from the game, but like depleted, destroyed. And it's like, yeah, that's what happens when you throw that ball. Now, when the ball's in the air, you're like, well, if there's a collision, they're going to get a free 15 yards, for unnecessary. And that's exactly what happened, even though it's like, you're putting your wide receiver in harm's way. But that's beside the point. Ultimately, the Eagles, I think at this point in time with these 4 teams, remove the quarterbacks because the best quarterback in this game is the rookie. Their roster is pretty stupid. I mean, it's pretty freaking good, and it looks like as we are recording right now, Mitchell, the rookie corner, you feel like he's gonna be okay play.
I think so.
So, they're relatively healthy. I guess they're just healthy. Obviously, Saquon looks like, I don't know, Barry Sanders in the open field or Adrian Peterson. And the receivers are sweet. AJ dropped the ball, but his comments after the game, he clearly hates playing in snow. And it's looking at the weather this morning, it's not going to snow. It's going to be cold. But all 4 of these teams are live in freezing cold places. So it's not. Now, it would have been a big deal to me if it was snowing because of the ability to change direction and run obviously changes for Washington and their quarterback. But if it's just a cold game and the field's fine, then I think, nothing, no issue there for Washington. I think the way I look at this is it's their sexy pick. Everyone's picking them, like rooting for the story. If you do want to bet Washington, I think you just bet them to win the game. I just feel like they kind of it ends here. Now, I don't love like betting on Philly. It's not like I have a lot of faith. Their quarterback's banged up. He's just been off. Uh, but I just think their talent is just too immense. I mean, the talent, you and I did a quick exercise before we hopped on and press record. If you take out Jaden Daniels, who Howie would trade, he would drive Jalen Hurts to Washington for Jaden Daniels. The Eagles would be unstoppable if that was the case. I don't know how many starters for Washington would start for the Eagles. It's the number's probably under two. So I mean, the talent discrepancy in this game is honestly for an NFC Championship game, it's borderline like historic.
Yeah, we were talking like the worst rosters overall to make a conference championship game. Like 2014 Colts came to mind. And by the way, yeah, to fix major sports, you get college. There's another college basketball fixing scandal going on in east of Michigan, but
It like
there's ten.
currently, like happening right now.
Yeah, yeah.
How much was the kid getting?
I don't know. It's in the news. Like they're just being investigated. There's been like shady line movement and
Did you notice it when you were as a gambler? Like,
yeah, there was. I noticed the weird line movement. I wasn't involved or privy to it, but yeah, you can Google it. There's some stories out there about it. They're just being their activity was flagged. Um, but 2002 Kings Lakers that definitely was fixed. Western Conference Finals. Tim Donaghy, Philly guy. I think Cardinal O'Hara guy. There was I think Game 6 was criminal. Game 5 or 6. But anyway, and I
it
don't
was
even
it
blame
was game
Mahomes for
six,
flopping.
game five was the Vladi tip to Ori, and then game six was the
Was the worst officiated game I've ever seen in my life.
yeah.
I don't even blame Mahomes. Allen flops too. Like, yeah, they're trying to help their team. I hate to watch it. It's so bush league, but hey, you're trying to get an advantage if you're going to get called. It's the rules and that they have to fix. But um, yeah, Philly. Yeah, we said maybe like one or two guys would start on Philly that start for Washington. So there's a major talent gap here, and Philadelphia's rosters much better. Now
And
Washington's
Washington, you could argue beside the quarterback, their best players Terry McLaurin, and two of the best players on the Eagles are the two wide receivers. you know,
yep. Uh, now Washington's a high variance team, like all year. I mean, they went 20 of 23 on fourth down during the regular season, which is completely ridiculous. Doesn't matter. Like people are like, well, Daniels is different and he's mobile. I mean, well, we've seen great mobile quarterbacks before. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, like no one is that's like an unsustainable rate. But it's one game. They could go 4 for 5 on fourth down here. I expect them to be aggressive. They're the underdog. It's been done all year. They could go 4 for 5 on fourth down, and they might be right in this game. That could lead to touchdowns. We saw that in Detroit last week. Or, they could go 1 for 5, and then you give the ball back to Philly because the worst unit in this game by far is the Washington defense. We know that. Everyone can be confident in saying that. It's hard for me to see them getting stops. Now, the one thing that can help them here is AJ Brown. I don't think it's 100%, like still dealing with a knee issue. Hurts isn't 100%, and the offense just hasn't been firing at all cylinders. Like Green Bay, Hurts had the lowest success rate of a quarterback that won in the wild card round in like 10 years. It was ugly. Their offense didn't do much. And then last week it was Barkley in the snow. It was just, I mean, how do you stop them
you don't.
anyway? But especially in snow. But their offense didn't look right. But I assume Barkley's gonna have a big day here. Will Hurts, one of the angles I like for a prop is Dallas Goedert over yards. I think like 38 and a half, 39, up to like 39 and a half, somewhere right below 40. Over 3.5 catches as well. This is a guy who shows up in every single postseason game. Since 2019, he's played in 8 playoff games. He's cleared 3.5 catches in every one. He's averaged 5.1 catches on 7 targets for 54 yards. He's got 3 touchdowns. Median catches and receptions 6 for 57. So and what I think is going to happen here, and Washington can't cover tight ends. They're 26th in the league adjusted for opponent, and they didn't face the Eagles with Goddard one game. They didn't face the Cowboys with Ferguson. They didn't face the Cardinals with McBride. Njoku got hurt early against the Browns, and they're still 26, and they faced a handful of backup quarterbacks. Hurts has the highest scramble rate in the league, dealing with a knee injury. Design runs, I think, are going to be out the window. I don't think he's going to scramble as much. Washington does like the blitz. So what does that mean? I think it's a lot of a lot more quick passes to Goddard. So like a banged up, and if you're Washington, you have to say, look, our defense isn't great. It's the NFC Championship game. Hurts kind of banged up. Their passing attack hasn't been great. AJ Brown might not be 100%. We have Lattimore. You have to say
Yeah.
we have to stop Barkley. Like it doesn't matter if you get burnt deep. Like you got to say Hurts beat us through the air. You're not even that mobile. We're going to come after you. We're going to load the box. We got to stop Barkley. You have to do that if you're watching. So I think that's going to open up some quick passes to Goddard, maybe some screens against. We saw a screen that got called back for an illegal man downfield where Goddard had a big game as well. So I think that since Goddard came back, he's looked really good. Past 6 games, he's averaged four catches on 5 targets for about 46 yards. Had 8 on 10 catches for 103 yards this postseason, and had that screen called back and middle of the field. Washington, second worst in the league at defending the middle of the field. The Bills are the third worst. The worst was the Panthers. So that I think the tight ends for both the Eagles and the Chiefs could have big days because both the Bills and the Commanders really struggle to defend over the middle of the field. So I like some Goddard over props, but I think it'll probably come down to like the side and the total. How successful is Washington on these fourth downs? Because I have to give a lot of credit to Daniels. Like it kind of reminds me in a way of Flacco. It's a completely different player. But when Flacco was, you got to go back to the Ravens when he was like a really young player. They called him January Joe Cool. Like he just looked like he was never phased. He would just sit on the sidelines, like being against Brady. Then he'd go in and lead a touchdown drive. Daniels looks completely unbothered. By the way, the home teams have won every playoff game except the Commanders, who have won 2 road games with a rookie quarterback, which never happens. And in both games, he hasn't made any mistakes, and the veteran quarterbacks have. I mean, the poise
And
of this kid.
those Ravens teams were good, right? I mean, when
Yeah,
he first showed up, I mean, they had some serious talent on the team, right?
yeah.
Those teams, you put Jaden Daniels on those teams, I mean,
Oh
shit,
man,
they might have like 3 Super Bowls.
yeah.
The way he's
No,
playing.
yeah. I'm not comparing the two as far
I
as
know what
talent,
you're
but
saying. His body language and how that's just Joe's personality and this guy's person. A
yeah,
lot of quarterbacks get you watch Patrick and Josh, they get amped up, you know.
yeah. Yeah, so the poise of Daniels has been super impressive, and he hasn't made a mistake in 2 games. But um, yeah, I mean, I see Philadelphia winning this game. I just think the Washington defense won't hold up. How do you make up for that though? Create variance, and that's fourth downs. That's being aggressive. And then if Hurts isn't 100% healthy in this, and Washington just loads the box, and Hurts and this passing attack can't get going, you get a turnover or two then all of a sudden you're live. You get a couple fourth downs, all the pressure's on Philly. But this will be a tall order for Washington. It's also their fourth straight road game, which is not easy. Historically, teams have not fared well in this spot, but hell of a job by Dan Quinn and obviously Daniels to get this roster, which just is void of talent across the board compared to, I mean, look at the other teams that are remaining. So uh they can come in and play loose though. They have that feel of a team that's just
Well,
I mean, what do they keep saying?
for a little
Anytime, anywhere.
underdog, I mean, how many little underdogs? I mean, they're going to the NFC. They have 14 wins on the season. I know we can nitpick the wins, but still, that's a shitload of wins. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like they were some 8-win team that got in on a bad division or a bad conference on a given year. I mean, this team won 12 games and then obviously have won 2 straight games in pretty impressive fashion. I mean, I thought the Bucks win was really impressive. Obviously, they went in the Lions game to kick ass and take names. I mean, they were not intimidated. Now, granted, the Lions missing a million defenders, but I think I heard Scott Van Pelt say that the teams that have won so far in the playoffs have 3 total turnovers, and the teams that have lost have 21. So it's
Yeah.
like sometimes we
That's
overcomplicate it. Like you said, the variance. Like if one of these quarterbacks, and it's bound to happen, and hell, it could be Mahomes or Allen has a game where they fumble or throw a pick in an inopportune time in the third quarter, and that leads to a touchdown. I mean, if the final scores are in the high teens or low 20s, that's the difference right there.
Yep. Yeah, or just a big fumble like we saw with Andrews last week.
Oh,
I will say
how
that
about the Rams? What's Kieran Williams had the big fumble? That was
yep.
devastating.
Yeah, he's got to clean up the fumble issue. But I will say for the Commanders, I think it helps that like we've seen Daniels be poised, but I mean it did help to play. Tampa's not a tough place to play, and they already played in Tampa earlier this season. Detroit, like they were down, 13 of their 13 guys and they're too deep on defense. They've been poised. Going to a championship game is a different animal, but it's a divisional game. Like I think that helps them in some sense. Like they've already played in Philly, they played Philly twice, and they did for all anyone wants to say about look, Philly is about to blow them out. Hurts got hurt, Pickett came in. They still put up 36 on the Eagles defense. Like if the offense had injuries, they'll have confidence here. It's just that their defense by far is the worst unit on the field, which will probably be the difference if there's just normal fourth down and turnover variance. But um, the Commanders can make this really interesting by staying aggressive, which they've done all year, and continuing to be successful in fourth downs.
You were born and raised in Philly, right?
Yep. Right out suburbs of Philly, like
Yeah, but I
15,
mean,
20 minutes outside of.
you're a Philly guy. Do you think it is possible if they are upset and the guy that owns the Philadelphia 76ers is hosting the NFC Trophy at the link, having just taken down the Eagles team? Like, I
Oh
don't know how
man.
that guy could. And the Sixers are a complete joke, falling apart, the laughing stock of the city.
Oh
And
God. I
you
didn't even think of
ruin the
this.
heart and joy and the soul of the city, their team, the Birds. And especially, it's like he took over a divisional team who also had sucked forever. Never the Eagles ever even thought about the Commanders. It wasn't a rivalry. They just played them. Even if they beat them every once in a while, it was like whatever. It was like a random loss. Can you envision that guy holding that trophy up? I think he'd have to sell the Sixers. I really do. I don't think he could. I think this week's got to be weird for him. Showing up to the stadium's got to be weird. He owns the fucking Sixers. I mean, this is. I mean, got to be. I haven't lived in every city, but top two or three sports city in America. And now this guy is challenging the Birds. I mean, I lived there for a couple years, man. I just don't think that's gonna fly. If they lose,
I didn't even think of
whatever. Yeah,
that.
go.
That's
They win, and he's holding that trophy because who's usually the first to get it? Who's usually the first to get interviewed? He's standing right there. Dan Quinn, Jane Daniels, and Josh Harris.
Yeah, that just made this game a lot more interesting. I didn't even think of that angle. That's amazing.
He'd get booed at every
Yeah.
Sixer game he went to the rest of his life, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember it would bring the Eagles had good luck or good success in NFC Championship games lately. I think they've won two straight at home. But early to mid 2000s, they were losing a bunch. They lost to the Bucks. I remember one game where everyone thought they were going to win. Rondé Barber, I think, had a pick six on McNabb
Wasn't the final
at the
score in that
end.
game like 12-7 or something? There was a low
I think
scoring game, one of those to
no,
the
that
Bucks.
was I think the Bucks won like 24-10 or something. Like it was close, and then Eagles were driving, and then Rondé Barber had a pick six. They lost to the Panthers and Jake Delhomme, I think, like 10-3, 12-3, something like that. Um, and I think that was the year after the Bucks game. I don't know. I get them all confused.
Yeah, it
But
would have been.
yeah,
Gruden went before the Panthers went.
yeah. So yeah, then you throw in Harris angle. Ooh, yeah, there's not going to be a lot of happy people. I will say I'm rooting for.
They've had their last two NFC Championship games have been pretty sweat free. I mean, they beat the shit out of Minnesota the year with Foles,
Crushed them.
and then Purdy's
San
arm
Fran,
fell
they
off the
just
first
yeah, there
drive. They
was
didn't have a quarterback. That game was a
yeah,
joke.
that
So
was a
it's like
joke.
they have not sweated at all. Like even this playoffs have been a little interesting.
Yeah,
Those two championship games are as easy of a championship game as you can ever have.
yeah. The San Francisco game was a joke.
Minnesota game was like a party after like two drives. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, I think that was like 40-7.
Oh,
That um yeah, I'm personally rooting. So I'm like if I had a outside of my bets, I haven't bet on either of these games sidewise. I think for the best Super Bowl, I'm personally I'm personally rooting for Bills, Eagles. The reason that I'm rooting for the Bills is because what do I do for after conference championship weekend, we have 2 weeks, one football game left. And I will do my podcast. I will write about them. I will do shows. I'll do shows like this. I got to talk about one game for 2 weeks. I'm tired of talking about the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So personally, that's I would like some fresh blood, but I'm sure the NFL wouldn't mind the Chiefs back there because they're polarizing now, which is what you want from a league perspective. You have people hate
Oh,
them, people love them. They get all the eyeballs. So
they're becoming
I
like
have
the
nothing
Yankees
against
or
the
the
Chiefs.
Lakers. Who would have ever thought Kansas City is becoming this big bad brand that people just
Villain.
can't stand?
Yeah, they're the villain role with this lovable. Andy Reid can never be the villain, but they're becoming like the villain in the
People
league.
be
So just
tired of Taylor.
personally, I'd like to, and I think Eagles Chiefs. I really don't want. We it was already a Super Bowl recently, um, but it's pretty crazy that we've had 15 straight AFC Championship games with Brady or Mahomes in them. Wild.
That's pretty nuts. Well, Stuckey, I will.
Who are you rooting for, by the way? Before you go,
I
who's you,
I
who would you like
think
to say?
the Washington story is really cool, but like I want a good game in the Super Bowl, and to me, the
Yeah,
Eagles, like I can't see Washington winning the Super Bowl. The Eagles
yeah,
can win the Super Bowl, and even
sure,
if the Eagles lose, like they can play you really fucking tight, and they are just
yeah.
loaded. So to me, it's got to be the Eagles, and I just think the Bills, like the story of the franchise. Sean McDermott's just he's just a good guy. He works his ass off. He kind of doesn't get talked about like a lot of coaches that he wins like. And it would just be one of those like, can everyone just look back at his resume? He's been going to the playoffs. This is the second time. This is the rivalry too. Like this is the Manning Brady. This is the fourth time they've played in 5 years, right? Second time in the
Yeah.
championship game. He's really played him well, right? It's like I mean they literally had him beat one year, obviously. Uh, so I think that'd be pretty cool. I wouldn't complain for Chiefs. Like it doesn't bother me as much. I just know a lot of guys on the staff, so it's like that'd be cool too. I don't think we can lose with the AFC game. Uh,
Yeah.
because like you said, I think everyone would complain so much for the Chiefs. Everyone has an opinion on the Chiefs, and that's ultimately what you want, especially in our business.
Yeah.
People care. I do
Yep.
think it's very important for the Eagles to be there to get a good game. The weeks leading up would be fine and cool and be fun to talk about, but I can see a game where it's like they just lost 35, lost by 15, 20 points.
Yeah, the Commanders' defense against Allen or Mahomes probably not going to end well.
So as we sit here right now, I think we get Bills, Eagles. I mean, obviously, I don't feel great about the Bills, but I think I'd be the team that has the most pressure by a mile. Like ultimately, if the Bills lose to the Chiefs, it's like yeah, everyone's lost to the Chiefs. If the Chiefs finally lose, like big deal. Belichick and Brady lost a lot too. If the Eagles were to lose, that city, man, people would. It's weird because it's not like I bet if you went to in Philadelphia right now, a lot of Eagles fans, it's not like they're cocky thinking they're a lock for the Super Bowl. They're probably a little nervous. This feels a little weird for how good they are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Agreed.
that's what makes these two games. Uh, yeah, it should be. Hopefully, we get. I mean, like we rooted for last week, and it turned out that way. Just give me some good entertainment.
Agreed.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon, buddy.